Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Mums and Murder. I hope that your January was filled with good things. It's been a long month. It has been full of colds and sick things in this house, but we are finally getting to the end of it, and February is just here. So yeah, the love month, I suppose. I hope that you are all doing well. This month, it being February and celebration of all things Valentine's, I have decided to bring you couples who kill a little series and see how we go from there. So I hope that you can all enjoy these little bits. I know I have. So everybody grab a little drink, a cup of tea or a little cup of coffee or whatever it is that you fancy. Sit back, relax and enjoy, and let's just get stuck right in, and I hope you enjoy them. This week's couple are known as the Ken and Barbie killers. Do not let that name fool you. It's a cutesy name, but they were a horrific couple. Diabolical. Actually, it will make your stomach turn, some of the things that they did. They got this nickname because they were just two beautiful people, and they were. Blonde hair, just stunning, and 80s style. Kids, I suppose they were kids at the start. She definitely was anyway. So let's get stuck in. His name was Paul Bernardo and her name was Karla Homolka, and they were both born in Canada. Paul, he came from a place called Scarborough, and Karla, she came from, I think it was St. Catharines, which was about maybe a few hours drive from Scarborough. So yeah, they are not good people, but let's get stuck in. We'll start with Paul. Paul, again, he was born and raised in Scarborough. His father was not the best man in the world. He was creepy, as what we would describe as creepy. He was also a paedophile and a peeping Tom, and he was reported to police for being a peeping Tom, for peeping through neighbours' windows. He openly abused Paul's sister in like the living room if they were watching a movie or something. And unfortunately, Paul also fell down that rabbit hole. But apart from that, in his home life being not great, he managed to put on a front even at a very young age, and he was at Boy Scouts and he went to school and everything seemed normal and happy, but it wasn't. It really wasn't. When he was about 16, he got into this massive fight with his mother, who at this stage, by the way, had completely switched off to the whole family life and anything to do with family. She had took herself down to the basement to live, but anyway, they got into this massive row, her and Paul, and it came out then that this guy, who he thought was his dad his whole life, is not his dad, although there are similarities in them, uncanny, but he turned out to not be his dad. So this led to Paul's behaviour came out in a bad way. He then became a peeping Tom, and he was also caught peeping through the neighbours' windows. And I'm sorry, my hair is annoying the life out of me. He also got caught peeping through people's windows, and it was just, that's how it all started. So that is Paul in a bit of a quick little nutshell. That's Paul. He went on to college. He wanted to have a big dream. He was like the 6-figure lifestyle, the cars, fancy house, the girl. He wanted to have it all. And in some respects he did for a while. But he was just a hard human being, so it didn't last long. But that was Paul, and I'll put a picture of him in somewhere here, maybe. So next we'll move on to Karla. Karla Homolka, sorry, I can't really pronounce her name very well. In retrospect, she actually grew up in quite a normal household. There was nothing really untoward about her childhood or upbringing. There was a bit of a rumour that her dad was very past remarkable with them whenever he'd had a drink or two. But that was it really. Nothing else really outstanding, to say the least. Everything was normal. She had two other sisters, I think, all blonde-haired, blue-eyed beauties. All went to school, just lovely girls. So nothing untoward about her upbringing. These are just two people who should never ever have met. They were just two people who had very dark sides to them, and the combination of the two, not good. So, anyhow, Karla, she wanted to be a veterinarian, so she also worked at a veterinarian's. I think it was a veterinarian's or pet shop, but she worked there anyway. And they went on like this pet retreat. Oh, it's not a pet retreat, it was a conference, sorry. A few times over, which happened to be where Paul lived. And he was also in the same hotel, but for a different conference. And the two girls, so there's four of the staff had went, two older girls, and then Karla and a friend, so two younger girls. And they all met in this one hotel. The two girls snuck out of their room, went down to the bar, had a few drinks. She met Paul, and that was it. They just hit it off from that moment onwards. They were like inseparable, and that was in 1987 on the October 17th. And yeah, they just hit it off. He would come and visit her. He would stay over at her house. Her parents loved him. They thought he was great for her. He had great prospects, great future. And they just loved him. He came, he stayed. He was part of their family. And they liked him very much, and liked him for Karla, and liked what was happening there. Eventually he did move in with them. So, they really did like him. Round this time, between like 1987 and 1990, there was a lot of sexual assaults in Scarborough taking place in the middle of the day, broad daylight, by how he was described as kind of the boy next door type of attacker. Blonde hair, blue eyes, very clean shaven, but people didn't know who it was. And from 1987 till 99, these were, broad daylight. They would come behind the women, attack them, and leave them alive. Well, he did leave them alive. He didn't kill them at that stage. So, yeah. Then they sort of stopped. Police couldn't figure out who it was. They didn't have a clue. They didn't have any leads. They didn't have anything to go on. They had some DNA samples, like over 130 DNA samples taken, and still couldn't find a match. So once these sort of attacks stopped, the police, they weren't sure if the assailant had been taken to jail for another charge, or if he died, or if he just had moved towns to somewhere else. Keep that in your head. Remember, Paul moved into Karla's a few times over. Yeah. So they had like a sketch drawn of stuff, but nobody ever put two and two together at that point. So that is a small little snapshot of who Paul and Karla are. He didn't have a great upbringing. He went to college. His focus was he wanted to have this big six-figure lifestyle. She wanted to be a veterinarian. She was quite quiet. it is said as their sort of relationship progressed, he was more controlling towards her. Now, there was a considerable age, well, not a considerable age difference. She was 17 when they first met, and he was 23. It's not considerable. When I say considerable, it's not. But he was older. You know, it did become slightly more controlling. Friends have said, you know, if he phoned her and she didn't come running to the phone at work, you know, there would be trouble. He dropped her off. He picked her up. You know, looking back in hindsight, they were able to say about how, even now looking back at her, how she dressed differently, how, you know, her home mannerisms sort of changed. But I suppose at the time, nobody was really picking up on these things. It's just now being able to look back at what was happening, that it sort of happened. He was peeping Tom. He was aggressive towards other girlfriends. He had restraining orders put against him by, like, I think 2 other girlfriends. So, you know, he did have that dark side. The dark side wasn't hidden. It was hidden, but it wasn't hidden very, very well. But things just went from, like, bad to really bad. Really, really, really bad. And like I said, Paul, he fitted in really, really, really well with Karla's family. He moved into their house and he got on well with all her sisters. He had a particular liking for Karla's younger sister, Tammy. He really did like her. Give her lots and lots of attention. You know, got on with her really. The younger sister, he was an older guy. He just got on with her really well. But Karla, on the other hand, wasn't so fussed on the fact that he was giving all this attention to Tammy. He really, 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 really didn't like it. She really, really, really didn't like it. And unfortunately for Tammy, she became their first victim. So, Christmas Eve, 1990, I think it was, as part of Karla's Christmas present. Yes, you heard correct. As part of Karla's Christmas present to Paul, she not being the virgin when they met. This was Paul's thing. And he had been caught peeping on Tammy a few times. Like, he would have, when she went to get changed, he would have went round and looked in through the window. So yes, Karla didn't like the fact that Tammy got so much attention and that, you know, Paul was peeping on Tammy while she was getting changed and stuff. So yeah, as a Christmas present, she decided that Paul could have Tammy. Yeah, you heard that absolutely correctly. So on the 9th of December, well, we're leading up to Christmas, in 1989, Paul and Karla got engaged. They went to Niagara Falls, they got engaged, blah, blah, blah. They're just disgusting human beings. It's hard to talk about, but this is where we are. A year later, so for one Christmas they get engaged. For the next Christmas, Karla decides to give her sister to Paul. Unbeknownst to her sister, obviously, this was not an agreed thing. She didn't just go, oh yeah, I'd love to have Paul. No. They decided that they were going to drug her and rape her. And she would not know anything about this. They did attempt it a few days beforehand, but she woke up. So this time they were like, no, let's do it right. So again, 24th December 1990, everybody had went to bed, and Karla and Paul had stayed up, and Tammy had stayed up with them. She was about 15, I think, at the time, and they decided, she was like, oh, she was going to have a couple of drinks with them. But what they did was they drugged her drink. So they gave her alcohol and drugs, and then Karla had brought home a halothane to put on a rag, put over her mouth, so that she wouldn't wake up during the attack. They also decided to film the attack. So they drugged her, and they were in the middle of attacking her, and Karla kept the rag over Tammy's face. They took it in turns to assault Tammy. One held the camera, one assaulted her, and then Tammy got very, very sick and started vomiting. She actually choked on her own vomit and died. But instead of just, oh crap, my sister is vomiting, and perhaps after all this drugs and alcohol that we have plied her with, we might need to phone an ambulance to come get her. No, they needed to redress her, clean up the crime scene, put her in her bed, and then phone an ambulance to come and take her. Tammy actually had chemical burns around her mouth, but Paul and Karla explained them away by saying that they had pulled her along the carpet on the floor, so she must have got like rug burns on her mouth from them trying to get her up and stop the vomiting. Fortunately, Tammy died. She had choked on her own vomit and she died, and it was ruled as accidental death. Like, that's what it was ruled as. Her parents, at that moment, her parents just thought, she was experimenting and it went wrong. To teenager, she mixed things that shouldn't have been mixed, and it went wrong. Heartbroken as they were. Tammy's funeral came and went, and friends said during the funeral, people kind of just left Paul and Karla to themselves. They were in like a huddle, just the two of them. They had said that Paul looked like a deer in the headlights. He was looking scared because everybody knew that he was the one that had given her a drink of alcohol, and that's what she died from. Well, partly one of the reasons that she had passed, and so he was a bit, everybody at that point just thought he was feeling a wee bit guilty, because obviously he was the one who had got the alcohol and had given her a drink, and people thought he was just guilty. Little did they know how guilty and what had actually happened. But so that was really their very first victim together. Absolutely horrific, absolutely sickening how you can do that to your own sister, giving her over to a man firstly, but also participating in that act, in that crime, and then covering it all up, and then staying with him, and then going home and sleeping in the same house. And that doesn't end it there. A couple of weeks later, there is another videotape of Karla dressed in Tammy's clothes, wearing her hair as Tammy did, speaking in Tammy's voice, being with Paul as Tammy, so that he got to finish whatever fantasy he had about Tammy. Now, that was her sister. Absolutely horrific. Absolutely disgusting how your own sister, and then pretending to be her later on down the line. No, not even later, like a couple of weeks. There is no guilt. There was no shame. There was no remorse. That was not controlling. He did not control her into that. That was her little sister. She was supposed to protect her at all costs. She was supposed to keep her away from men like that and people like that. And instead, she gave her over. Here you go. I'm in love with you so much. Have my baby sister. Ugh. Just that was that part. A couple of months then on down the line, I think it was 6 months later, Karla and Paul had their wedding. They got married, and on their wedding day, a body was discovered in the lake. Can't remember. It'll come to me. A body was discovered. It came up in the news. People were waiting to go to a reception. It came up on the news. Before they got married, Paul and Karla had moved into their own house, their own beautiful big house, and Port Dalhousie. Sorry, I'm very sorry if I'm saying these wrong. And this is where victim number 2 comes into play, and victim number 2 was Leslie Mahaffey. Leslie was a textbook teen, typical teen, a little bit rebellious. She had went out. I think she went actually to a friend's funeral, if I read correctly, somewhere along the line, and she did not come home until late. It was past her curfew, so her parents had locked her out. She couldn't get into the house. She then phoned a friend to see she went to her friend's house to see if she could stay with them. And the friend was like, no, you can't stay with us. So, she was just a typical teenager who had, unfortunately, missed her curfew and got locked out of her house. But Paul, he had also taken up a side hustle. And so he was like exporting stuff across borders and things. So he was out trying to steal some license plates. This was how he bumped up that salary. Eventually, actually, it became his only source of income. But yes, he took up some new illegal activities, and that's what he was out trying to get license plates for that. He spotted Leslie, and he explained to her that he would take her home, or he would look after her, whatever. But he got her in the car, and he took her back to his house, put her in the basement, and went up and woke up Karla, because it was like late at night, and had said to her, oh, I have a girl in the basement. Karla initially apparently didn't really give a flying that he had a girl in the basement, and just sort of, right, okay. But then she did. She eventually got up, and they tortured her and videoed it. Again, the tapes. Videoed it, tortured her, assaulted her several days. There was like a Father's Day or a Easter or some sort of a holiday anyway, and Karla's family came for a meal. And just a few hours before they arrived, they had taken little Leslie's life. And so while they all sat up the stairs and ate their dinner, Leslie lay in the basement, gone. Horrifically gone. Horrific. What they did next to Leslie, even more horrific. They cut her up, they dismembered her body, mixed it with cement, and threw her in the river or Lake Gibson. There we go. They put her threw her body into Lake Gibson, and a man was out. Beautiful day. He wanted to go and take the canoes and stuff out and go out in Lake Gibson for a while, and they found Leslie's body. So sad. And then this, of course, was the body that they had discovered on, ironically, Karla and Paul's wedding day. Everybody was so shocked. Everybody was like, well, it couldn't be a local, because they know that the river goes down and they would only get found out. But nobody suspected. In fact, on the actual day of the family meal, I think Karla's mother was supposed to go down the stairs, and they were like, no, it's fine, we'll get them. They also had a dog that they kept in a crate in the basement. So I can only imagine the sights and scenes that poor dog had to endure. And like the dog was dying in its crate on a dead body. Horrible, horrible. That brings us then to victim number 2. Victim number 2 was Kristen French, and both Karla and Paul this time went out looking, and they went looking for their next victim. And Kristen just happened to be walking home from school. They spotted her, pulled into a car park, asked her for directions, and bundled her into the car. Kristen, again, down in the basement. Again, she was days of abuse. The things that they did to her, just horrific. And again, they videotaped every last bit of the attack. It's just so sad. Just so sad and so heartbreaking for these parents who... Well, Kristen literally was just coming home from school. So sad. So sad. But again, they, during this time, were acting like a normal couple. She was getting up and going to work. He was getting up and going to work. They had friends round to the house, you know, while these victims were alive in the basement, while the torturing was not maybe happening at that specific moment, but the victims were alive in the house. Now, Paul's side of the story is that he never wanted to kill anybody. That was never his intention. He just wanted to assault them. And that Karla was the one who killed them because Paul was so attracted to these girls and that they were giving him something that she couldn't. She was jealous. She had said, I think it was like Leslie's mask had slipped, and he's like, please, I won't tell anybody, I'll just let me go. And Karla's like, no, she knows our faces now, she has to go. You know, that was Paul's side of the story. I don't know. There's also a rumour of a Jane Doe, a girl that worked with Karla, who Karla brought over. She went for a few drinks, but what actually happened was they had drugged her and they had assaulted her while she was in their house. But the next day, she just thought she drank too much, and that's why she was feeling so rotten. She had no recollection of any assault or anything that happened, and she didn't know any of this until the police brought it to her door. So awful. But this is it. Police, they were looking, all these missing girls, they literally just threw Kristen on the ditch inside the road naked. They're not just disposed of her like she was a piece of rubbish. It was awful. Just so awful. But this is how they get caught. Karla went to the police because Paul had beaten her so badly that she wanted to make a police report. At this point, the police had zero evidence or leads on either one of these murdered girls. However, Karla got there, and Karla basically just threw it all out there. She just told them absolutely everything from start to finish. Everything that the police didn't have, they now had. And Karla managed to work herself a plea deal. She said that it was all Paul's fault. He wanted to do this. She was a controlled, abused woman who didn't have any other way out, didn't know that she could go to the police, didn't have a choice. He was threatening her, he was threatening her family. She just had to do the things that he said that had to be done. But it was all him, and she was just there. Police didn't have any other evidence. She had told them that about the tapes being in the house. Police spent 71 days in that house and found very little evidence. The house had been cleaned. There was very little physical evidence that these women had even been there. They could not find these tapes. These tapes that had evidence of everything from her sister, from home movies that were Karla dressed up, from the other girls' assaults. The whole evidence was all on these tapes. Police couldn't find them. 71 days they spent in that house combing it for evidence, and they could not find anything. So they went to trial. Karla, she's sitting there, I was abused woman, beaten woman. I did all this because I was under his control and I didn't think there was another way out. Paul, he comes in and is like, whoa. Yes, I am a rapist. Yes, I am a sadist. No, I am no murderer. Karla wanted these women dead, and Karla pushed for them to be murdered. So he basically went, yeah, I'm a bad guy. I'll put my hands up to my part, but I didn't murder. Not that this makes it any better, but that's basically what it was. So still no tape sort of at the start of the trial, and then turns out that Paul's lawyer at the time had the tapes and he had not handed them in. So he hands them in and then he quits. Obviously, things just weren't right there, so then he quits. So, unfortunately, Karla has already made a deal. Once they get their hands on these tapes, they can clearly see that she was a very fully willing participant in these attacks on these girls, especially her sister. Fully willing. There was no control, no coercing. She was taking the camera, then he was taking the camera. But by this stage, she had already made a deal. It just angers me so much, because realistically, they could have stopped this deal from happening. And they didn't. And she basically got away with murder. She got 12 years. The deal was 12 years. She didn't have any other conditions when she got out. That was it. 12 years. And that was it. And they wouldn't have got anything if she hadn't went to the police as well, because the police had no leads. The police had no evidence whatsoever linking anyone, never mind Paul and Karla, to these murders of these girls. So yeah, Paul was sentenced to life in prison. He was sentenced to life in prison and he could apply for parole after 25 years. Karla got 12 years. Karla did her 12 years. Karla got released. Karla is a free woman now, to date. She is a free woman. She was remarried and had her own children, was able to go and help out at school events. She had other people's children at her house. Just the sheer insanity of what has happened is insane. She was able to walk out. She could change her name. She could get a job. There no conditions. She basically did her 12 years and then she walked out free. That was it. Paul got life, and rightly so. His parole has continuously been refused, been rejected. He is obviously at risk of reoffending. He did, however, get moved to, he was in a maximum security prison. That has now been reduced to a medium security prison, which caused outrage in the community because they think he should just stay in maximum security, which the crimes are horrific. The things he did were horrific. You know, once he was arrested, they were able to get his DNA. They were able to link him then to the Scarborough rapist, because that was him, the boy next door. Once you seen that picture, you know, obviously his 1980s, 90s DNA and things like that weren't as good as they are now. So, you know, at that time, you were going off like sketches that people were doing, and looking back, people were like, oh my God, it was him. You know, I can make that connection now. It just looks like him. Now we know the crimes he's capable of, it was him. DNA proved it was him. So he was also, that was part of his sentence as well. So he deserved life in prison. He deserves to stay where he was, really. She is free as a bird. Free as a bird. This woman who psychologists said that she didn't have battered woman syndrome. They were like, you know, she knew what she was doing, but they made this plea deal, and this plea deal held. I can't even believe that it held. It makes me so angry. It just makes me so angry even now thinking about it. She literally did 12 years, and now she gets to live a life. She gets to have children. Her sister will never have children. Her sister will never get married. Her parents will never have grandchildren from her sister because of her actions that she took. But she got to go off. She got to go get married. She got to have her own family. She gets to live her own life. There's just certain crimes where I just think, no, you shouldn't, no. So yes, that is the story of the Ken and Barbie killers. And again, given the cutesy name, not so much with the cutesiness at all. It was just horrific crimes. You know, you can maybe think that she was controlled by him. He did have that type of personality. He did control her to a certain degree. However, she always had that choice. That choice was there. As soon as he was peeping at her sister, that choice should have been made to sling your hook. But it wasn't. The choice to give her sister to him was her choice. She chose to do that. And you can say that she was jealous of the girls, and that's why they ended up murdered. Perhaps Paul would not have murdered them. Perhaps it was just the assault, and he might have let them go. He did let the other women that he did on his own go. But who knows? I feel like these are two people. They have two different backgrounds of growing up. They just should not have been connected in any way. I feel like it was two personality traits that were very, very toxic, human, evil together. I think that yes, these things probably still would have happened separately on their own, but together their crimes were so much worse. So that's my opinions. It's just an opinion. It's not a fact or state of law. It's my opinion. Let me know your opinions. Let me know what you think about this couple. Do you think that she was abused and that, you know, he had full control over her? Do you think that really she had choices and she made wrong ones? You know, as of now, she hasn't reoffended. Is it a case of two people that should not have been together, come together, and then this what happened? Maybe she's remorseful. I don't know her personally. How is she going to explain this to her own children when they're old enough to understand? Because this is out there. There's documentaries, there's YouTube videos, there's news reports. This is out there for them to see and read. You know, sad. for those little girls that lost their lives, and for those women and girls who were attacked. Horrific. And hopefully those that were able to survive have lived full and happy lives, knowing that justice, at least for Paul, was served. I mean, she got a couple of years behind bars, I suppose, but the tapes. The tapes were eventually burnt, and the house in which they lived in was actually knocked down by volunteer builders and things that came along and knocked the house and stuff down. And the tapes were burnt. And rightly so, because nobody needs to see that. Nobody. So, yeah, that is the story of Paul and Karla. Again, let me know what you think. And I will see you very soon for another couple who killed. A bit more well known. The next one will be a bit more well known. So yeah, I shall see you soon, and have a lovely weekend and enjoy your time to yourself. Bye.